I'm walking along what was once an ancient coastal path here in North Norfolk. The Wash is just over there somewhere. And 1900 years ago, all of this would have been beach, and it would have been full of Romans. But they wouldn't have been working on their tans. They'd have been emptying the cargo boats, which supplied a massive fort, which was over there somewhere. This fort was called Branodunum. But we don't know how much of it survives, what it originally looked like, and whether it was one of the key outposts of the Roman Empire.
It is an incredible structure. We can see the wall exactly as it was put up by the Romans, what, 2,000 years ago.
We're stretched to the limit coping with all the finds.
Oh, lovely. Fantastic.
And astonished by the images from underground. It's a very big site we're going to dig this week, over 20 acres. So can we uncover the story of 250 years of Roman occupation here at Branodunum in just 3 days? Who knows? The Romans invaded Britain in the middle of the 1st century AD, and by the 2nd century, they'd taken control of the eastern coastline. This Roman shore fort at Branodunum must have dominated all that went on here. What's brought us to this National Trust site are these aerial photos, which show strange crop marks in 3 fields across the site. They're tantalising clues to the size and scale of the lost Roman fort and town that are just waiting to be discovered. Roman Branodunum could even have been bigger than modern-day Brancaster. But if it is as huge as it looks, why was it built in this far-flung corner of Norfolk? And what exactly was here? Time Team's Francis Pryor is itching to get started. A lovely summer's day in a grassy meadow.
Well, we're not on holiday, Tony.
No, that's true.
Yeah, it is a lovely grassy meadow, but it's also a Roman fort. And this place is stiff with archaeology.
What's so special about this place?
Well, I mean, look over there, OK? That is what is showing up on the aerial photograph. Those crop marks. That's a small town. I don't think I've ever been on a time team that has so many crop marks.
Well, don't get carried away. They're a little bit blurred.
Well, they are. But for you, I've plotted them out. So there are the crop marks of the town. Here's the Roman fort.
It is huge, isn't it? You are right. There's a heck of a lot.
It is vast, Tony.
It's 24 acres in all, and John Gator's Geophys team have been busy. The crop marks suggest there's a huge fort and next door a vicus or settlement. For the last 12 hours, they've been scanning the fort's interior with magnetic sensors. And their brand new towable radar technology should tell us if those crop marks are actually indicating Roman buildings still in the ground. But the techie team are struggling. Jimmy's kit loses a vital part.
That'll teach me to make sure that everything's tightened up before we start, won't it?
And Emma's computer is misbehaving too. Things aren't going well for Geophys.
Well, we've got problems with Emma downloading the data.
Yeah.
The wheel's just fallen off the radar.
But you have managed to do some, Mag.
I've got results, and basically what we've done is we've refined the aerial photographs so we can pinpoint things accurately on the ground. We've done a bit over the Principia.
Yeah.
And then a bit over this building that's on a different alignment.
He says Principia. Presumably that just means the main building, does it?
Yeah, that's basically the headquarters building, the command building.
But we don't know anything about this second one.
No, we don't. And I want to get a trench in both those buildings because we can't hang around. I mean, while his wheels are dropping off, you know, time is passing. I'm getting a bit anxious, Tony.
OK, so where are we going to put in the trench?
I am going to put the first trench here. That is where we are going to get the most important datable find.
While the Geophys team refocus their efforts, Phil takes command of the Principia trench, which in no time delivers the telltale sign of Roman daily life.
Must be Roman. oyster shells.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
Look at that, didn't they love their oysters?
Roman lunch.
I'd be convinced that's Roman. Let's be honest, Francis. Oysters are the sort of thing that would get really, really worked and churned and broken up in a plough soil.
Yeah.
These are surviving.
No, I mean, that's
in good condition.
That's very encouraging, Phil. It really is.
Francis's second trench is just 50 metres away. The geophys suggests it's out of kilter with the straight lines of the main fort. Matt Williams and Cassie Newland will be trying to find out just what this mystery building is. The fort here has been known about for centuries. It was built by the Romans to defend Britain against marauding Saxons coming over the North Sea. But was Branodunum's purpose purely defensive? David Gurney has studied Roman sites all over Norfolk and has got some intriguing ideas about this particular shore fort. Ever anybody talks about a Roman fort, I think of something that's crammed full of soldiers who leap out whenever there's anyone charging across the country and then nip back into the fort again. Is that the kind of thing that we're talking about?
I think at Branodunum it's more complicated than that. I think it possibly starts off with some trading and then it may become more defensive, with a more military function, and then towards the end, again, possibly more trading.
You said shore forts, so does that mean there was more than one?
Oh, yes. If we've got a map here of the 11 forts. So we've got Branodunum up there at the north end by the Wash, and then we've got 11 forts around the coast, ending up with Portchester down by the Isle of Wight.
So we do know that whatever Branodunum's function was, it was part of an overall strategy.
This is the Roman military having a very serious attempt to defend the coast of Britain and possibly doing this trading stuff as well.
So according to David, Branodunum was built for invading Roman soldiers, but alongside that, it developed into an important trading hub. Probably importing supplies they could trade locally for goods they could export. We're hoping the dig will shed more light on this dual role. Inside the fort walls, Phil's excavating the larger of the two buildings, which is the HQ, or Principia. We know it was stone-built, because there's an account of a clergyman who in the 1800s was robbing stone from here to extend his nearby mansion. He even dug and took stone from below the ground.
I was a bit worried that everything would have been nicked by the robbing reverend.
I'm pretty sure he wouldn't have taken everything. I'm sure he'd have left something for us.
The team have hit a layer of material that looks like a Roman demolition dump.
Yo!
But amongst this, Tracy's found a real surprise.
Hold your paw out. There you go.
Oh, wow.
Told you.
That is really nice, isn't it, eh?
It's gorgeous, isn't it?
It looks like a dice, isn't it? It's got rather more than the requisite number of dots.
It has.
3, 6, 9 dots there, 3 dots there.
Cross on the back.
Cross on there. That is rather splendid.
It's beautiful, isn't it?
Just 3 hours into our dig and finds are coming out of both trenches. The pottery Ian's found was made in Britain for the Romans who lived here.
I reckon looking at that rim, it's got to be more like second, third, probably more likely third, actually.
Fantastic.
And in Phil's trench, they're now digging through the layer of rubble from when the building was demolished. And that too is full of surprises. With such a wealth of artefacts coming out of the ground, we've brought in the British Museum's Roman finds expert, Philippa Walton.
So what have you got here for me then, Phil?
Well, it looks very much like what we've got is a large pewter plate.
It does look like a pewter bowl to me.
Looking at it as an object, it is definitely Roman, is it?
Yeah, definitely Roman. Late Roman, 4th century.
So what sort of people would be using this? Is it the sort of thing you expect on a military site?
Well, they're very unusual finds, but it's not something that wouldn't come up in a military context. Brilliant. That is amazing. That's the first pewter vessel I've ever held.
Is that really?
Yeah. They're really rare, Phil. They really are.
So this plate from the 4th century is from the last 50 or so years of the fort's occupation. possibly even just before the Romans withdrew from Britain. Let's hope the finds keep coming and that we start to uncover the buildings within the fort's walls. Roman forts in Britain share similar characteristics. As well as a Principia, they'd have a commandant's house and barracks, bathhouses, granaries, a guest house, and even workshops, almost as if they were built in kit form. But we've got no idea whether our fort has got all of these components. It's big enough, and the finds in our trenches are certainly building a picture of a bustling military fort. We now think the dice found in the Principia may be from a strategic board game played by soldiers whiling away their time. It's a wonky old shape, it looks pretty dodgy. You'd want to be in control of this game, wouldn't you?
You would.
But what about the bigger picture?
Well, the bigger picture, Tony, is that this trench that we thought was relatively straightforward this morning is vastly more complicated than we imagined.
Ah. John, have you got that geophys?
I don't think you wanted to see the geophysics, did you? You didn't need to?
No.
I mean, because you said on the Cropmarks we could see that we've got the main buildings and very little else.
That's good enough.
Look at what Graham's done magnetically.
Isn't that fantastic?
Incredible.
He's surveyed the whole fort now. I mean, we've got the main defences, we've got the main Principia building, we've got these responses that I've not seen the like of before. It is such an amazing picture.
But that's magnetic. I mean, what's Jimmy been doing his much-beloved radar then?
Look at that.
Oh, wow.
There's clear picture, the Principia.
That's not radar, is it?
That is the radar over the main building.
So we've got rooms over the main building which no one's ever seen before.
Ah, now you say there's rooms there that we haven't seen before. I think that we can actually see these walls appearing in the bottom of our trench.
And look, over here you've got the Principia, of course, and then look at that. I mean, I think that could be a granary. I mean, over here we might have the gatehouse and these buildings along here.
You've got a heck of a lot of choices available to you tomorrow, haven't you?
No, it's really worrying, Tony, because I think these decisions are actually going to be very important. I mean, you know, what we decide tomorrow is going to be important for another 50 years, you know, and it's going to sort out the dating.
So we've got just about the best geophys we've ever had on a Roman site. We've got fantastic finds, we've got loads of choices. What are we going to do? I think there's going to be a lot of thinking tonight at the hotel, not just drinking. And it's all your fault.
Discover the past with exclusive ancient history documentaries and ad-free podcasts presented by world-renowned historians from History Hit. Watch them on your smart TV or on the go with your mobile device. Download the app now to explore everything from the wonders of Pompeii to the rebellion of Boudica and the mysteries of prehistoric Scotland. Immerse yourself in the captivating stories of this remarkable era by signing up via the link in the description.
Day 2 here in Branodunum in North Norfolk, where we're looking for a Roman fort. Well, I say looking for one. Look at that. We found a Roman fort, that fantastic geophys that John's done, and that is radar there. So we've got an enormous number of potential places where we can dig, and you've been racking your brains all night about where to put one in. So where's it going to be?
Well, to be quite honest, Tony, I haven't slept a wink. All I can imagine, you know, are granaries, are barrack blocks, it's just buildings everywhere. It's been a nightmare. There are so many targets.
And where are you going to dig?
I want to put a trench across the seaward defences.
This is so archaeology, isn't it? You've got this great proliferation of information all over this page, and you want to do something right up the top there.
Ah, but it's not going to be a little thing, Tony. I want to go right across the defences and then come back through these buildings here. I promise you, a good big trench.
But before the digger makes the first cut, the new towable radar kit makes a sweep around where the trench is going in. With luck, this much higher definition underground imaging system will tell us more about the buildings and fort ramparts under the ground here. The ramparts themselves run for 50 metres in each direction.
I suspect we'll start hitting that rubble like they did in Trench 1.
And we're hoping we can discover how they were constructed and when. Already, Raksha and Ian have exposed what looks like a wall.
Yeah! Oh, Ian, brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
So that must be the footing for the wall there then.
Absolutely. Mwah. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
It's the first hint of an intact stone structure. Yesterday, the geophys results astounded everyone. The conditions in the ground are well drained and particularly good for their scanners. So now they've decided to extend their survey to see how much of the 24-acre site they can cover. We also opened 2 trenches yesterday, one over a mystery building that we want to identify, the other over the fort's HQ building, or Principia. As well as finds expert Philippa Walton, we've also called in Roman historian Mark Corney to assess the finds as they come out of the ground. At the Principia trench, Tracy's found a metal object.
It looks like a squashed nail almost. I don't know, Mark.
It's iron. I'll tell you what it is. It's a stylus.
No.
A writing implement, yeah. We've got the wedge end there.
Right.
We've lost about that much off the bottom, which would have been the point.
The stylus was used to inscribe onto wax tablets, and it was how Branodunum's officials would have recorded military orders and business transactions.
Good God, I've never seen one made of iron.
Yeah, you get them in iron as well as bronze, but that is definitely a stylus.
Wow.
And it's from the Principia, which is the administrative heart of the fort. It's evidence of Roman army bureaucracy.
And there was plenty to administer. The Cropmarks are clues that there was a big settlement just to the east of our site. We know there was one of a similar size to the west, because in the 1970s, a housing estate was built right on top of it. And while it was being excavated, archaeologists found important evidence of one of the cavalry units or cohorts. So who exactly were stationed here?
We're very fortunate, actually. We've got the names of 2 military units, which are probably the only 2 that were here. We've got from earlier excavations these stamped bricks, and they give us the name of the unit. CH for cohort 1, the numeral, then AQ for Aquitanum, the first cohort of Aquitanians from southwestern France, and they're probably the ones responsible for building the fort. By the 4th century AD, we've got this lovely document, the Notitia Dignitatum, and it tells us that we've got a cavalry regiment of Dalmatians. So that's from the modern-day Adriatic coast, what used to be Yugoslavia. It's a real cosmopolitan empire.
So it wasn't just soldiers from Rome. There were units from other ethnic groups that had been swallowed up by the expansion of the Roman Empire. Mark thinks that at one time there were 500 soldiers here. And in the Principia trench, they're uncovering finds that tell us more about those who were here 1900 years ago, including something crucial for any well-dressed Roman soldier.
Oh, what you got there? Oh, that's rather nice, isn't it? Well, I don't know what it is, but I know somebody who might. Philippa?
What have you found now then,
Well, it's
Phil?
not what I found, it's what Angus has just found.
Oh, wow, that's nice. What it is, it's a strap end.
So
Belt fitting, it would strengthen your belt.
it's the bit that goes on there then.
But a bit of a slimmer one.
Well, that's right, but as for a slimmer person, I suppose.
Yes, maybe.
I don't like to keep on harping on about it, but is it the sort of thing you'd expect to find on a Roman fort?
Definitely, this is something a soldier might have worn.
Go and find a soldier.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, you never know, do you?
Keep digging.
Yeah.
Finds aren't just confined to the trenches. Metal detectors combing our huge spoil heaps are unearthing lots of tiny finds with big stories.
Oh, lovely. Fantastic.
Some local tribes had been producing coins in Britain, but when the Romans arrived, their administrators soon put a stop to that. By 155 AD, the Romans were minting their own coins, and these are what we're finding.
Looks like you've got another coin here, Tracy.
Yeah, I mean, this has come off the spoil heap again, but we do know where it's come from, and that's the layer that we're doing at the moment. But it looks a bit different from the one we had.
Yeah, can I take a closer look? Okay. Yeah, it's 4th century in date, and the reverse shows a soldier spearing a fallen horseman.
Yeah.
And we can date this one quite specifically to the period 355 to 361.
Nice.
So it's the sort of same period as the pottery coming out of that trench.
Well,
as
that makes sense. Brilliant.
There you go. Brilliant.
The 40 or so coins we've found could have been changing hands for all sorts of goods and services. As Branodunum was the northernmost outpost of the Romans' east coast defences, and with no major roads leading here, the sea would have been vital for trade and travel. And back then, it's likely that the coastline would have been much closer to Branodunum than it is today. Francis has sent local archaeologist David Gurney and me on a mission to get a better understanding of what it was like here when the shore fort was in full swing. David, clearly this is navigable, but we are pretty far out from the shoreline.
Well, it's a very dynamic coastline and it's changed any number of times over the centuries. We can see this is mostly salt marsh now, but it would have been more open in the Roman period.
Oh, so you think that the Roman ships would have been able to get nearer?
I think there would have been quite a wide channel getting fairly close to the fort.
It's hard to imagine, isn't it, on a peaceful day like today, what this must have been like nearly 2,000 years ago, when it would have been chaos here with all those ships and soldiers and people.
Absolutely bustling, yes, really busy. Endless numbers of boats coming and going.
The Romans used boats that could carry up to 50 tons at a time. They had flat bottoms and were ideal for navigating coastal waters and rivers. And they didn't require a man-made dock or jetty. They could easily be beached on a high tide and their cargoes unloaded as the tide went out. It's only day 2, and we've got an astonishing volume of archaeology, over 2,500 pieces in all, that tell us about everything from Roman sports to the decorative arts. All these finds, guys, and still they keep coming. That's what's so great about Roman archaeology, isn't it?
It's brilliant. The Romans make a load of rubbish and a lot of datable rubbish too. So we've got lots of late Roman pottery here. We've got roof tiles, and we've got some really nice, beautiful small finds.
So what are your favourites?
Oh, well, I really like this bit of Samian ware that's got 2 little men boxing on it. It's really beautiful.
It's odd that they're boxing because they seem to be facing in the same direction. It looks as though one's punching the other in the back.
Yeah, well, violent Romans.
Why have you chosen a couple of bones?
Well, usually on archaeological sites, you concentrate on the bones for looking at what people were eating. But these are actually cockerel spurs, and that might tell us that people in the fort were doing a little bit of cockfighting in their spare time.
Cockfighting was among the many things the Romans introduced to Britain. Even Julius Caesar was an enthusiast. Yesterday, we opened our second trench over the smaller of the 2 buildings in the fort. It seems to be built on a different angle to the walls and the Principia building. Now we have a visible wall, so we can measure just how misaligned it is.
As for Emma, did you manage to get the alignments on our wall of our squiffy building? It's about 20 degrees off the outer fort's walls. So we've got what's on the Cropmark, basically? Yep, it's definitely on the same alignment.
We know the Romans built settlements and forts in straight parallel lines, so why does this fort seem to defy the laws of Roman town planning?
David, we always think of the Romans as marching in straight lines and at right angles.
Yeah.
And in Trench 2, it looks like the building isn't lined up on the fort. What do you think that means?
Well, you're quite right. We've got straight lines, but they're not all in the same degree of straightness, as it were. I mean, looking at the air photos and now the geophysics, of course, we can see that the building in Trench 2 looks as though it's on the same alignment as the main road that goes through the Vicus. And therefore, it raises the question as to whether or not it's an earlier building than the fort we've seen in Trench 1.
So does that make sense to you, Mark?
On one hand, it does. However, some of the other big shore forts in Britain, like Richborough and Lymm in Kent, you do get contemporary buildings which are misaligned to the fort defences. So, you know, pay your money, you take your choice, really.
Some of the stone rubble coming out of the trenches could help us begin to paint a picture of what the fort's walls might have looked like.
This is the grey stone that the buildings are made out of.
Over the centuries, the fort's stonework was systematically removed by robbers. It was such a high-quality building stone that it was reused in buildings that can still be seen in Brancaster today. But that wasn't the first time this stone was relocated. It's been discovered that this carstone or greystone is unique to a quarry at Castle Rising. And it's now believed that the stone was transported 25 miles by sea to Branodunum. And that would have involved well over 500 boatloads just to get the stone to site. In the trench spanning the ramparts, they can finally see the foundations of the fort's huge defences. Now, Matt, Mark and David are piecing together just how Branodunum's ramparts were built.
So we've got a nice wide foundation here, about 10 foot wide, which is about right. How far down does it go?
Well, just below you there, it's at least 3 courses, so maybe, 30 centimetres or so.
And is that a bit of grey stone right at the bottom?
Right at the very bottom. It looks like there's a little piece left, which means, they didn't manage to get it all out.
So if that grey stone is in situ, what we're actually seeing here is the rob's face of the wall.
Yeah, so this would have actually been the face out this way.
So
yeah.
this stuff is what's left of what came off that surface.
Can you imagine what it would have looked like, built from that freshly quarried, very pale grey white stone, perhaps 5-6 metres high, and, when viewed from offshore, it's going to dominate the skyline.
Branodunum's starting to look like a cut above the average Roman shore fort. Built with the finest stone, it was a statement of money and power, and a sign the Romans were here to stay. It's a significant piece of evidence which suggests Branodunum was more important than was previously thought. But we're halfway through our dig, and we still need to find out exactly what went on inside the fort and how long it stood here. We're here at Branodunum, digging a Roman site on the Norfolk coast. We've just a day and a half left to discover the extent of the buildings inside the fort. We could be on the brink of uncovering one of the most impressive shore forts on Britain's east coast. So far, the Geophys team have had such a success that they're now attempting to scan the entire site. We want to find the earliest version of the fort and what other buildings might be hidden here. John's latest results over the fort's HQ, or Principia, not only show that it was a huge building 40 metres across, but also suggest there could be a chamber below the ground floor.
So that's the detailed radar plot.
Oh, I like it. So what we're really saying then is that in between these two walls, we've got basically an underground room that goes down 2 metres.
You've certainly got a greater depth of deposits here, yes.
OK, so the archaeology is beginning to look as though it's backing up what you got on the geophysics.
So you're starting to believe me?
No, absolutely. I never doubted you for one moment, John.
There's a chance that the chamber could be undisturbed, unlike much of the site, which over the centuries has been ravaged by stone robbers who've removed most of the fort's stonework. Geophys have also been surveying in the field to the north, where the Cropmarks that we've highlighted are less distinct. This could be the site of a much earlier fort, where the first Romans landed their boats and established a base. But do these Geophys results reveal anything new?
Well, look, these are the latest results. I mean, we've got a complex of ditches, road systems coming across. If I didn't know better, I'd have said we've got a fort.
Where is it?
Well, there's our main fort,
Yeah.
and that's the field to the north.
You've got to put something in there, haven't you?
Absolutely, Tony. What's worrying me is that we've got a little bit of today left, and then it's just tomorrow. I mean, that's a tall order. We'll really have to get cracking.
But you want to go for it?
Oh, yeah.
So if the North Field turns out to be the site of an earlier fort, it would imply that a pioneering Roman unit was sent ahead, and the development of Branodunum and its much larger fort was a gradual process.
OK, in. Top off.
It's 20 years since Francis and his old comrade David Gurney dug trenches together.
We need to get into that ditch, don't we?
We do.
I'll get my shovel and I've got my trowel. There's my trowel. Yes, I'm ready to go.
When the Romans arrived, they'd have discovered land ripe for agricultural development. Finds from the 1970s dig nearby tell us they were producing grain. 2,000 or so people lived here, and the soldiers and officials, at least, could have been living very well indeed. The bones Naomi has been discovering tell us something of what was on the dinner table. Not only have we got loads of pottery and loads of coins, but we've also got shed loads of bone, haven't we?
Tons and tons of animal bone, really nicely preserved animal bone, so it's keeping me happy.
Yeah. So what have we got?
Well, we've got our typical Roman species, some horn cores there from a cow. We have pig, which is typical for military sites. We also have quite a lot of sheep, and we've got quite a few jaws.
Do you think they'd have been prepared on site?
Yes, I do, Tony, because we've got quite a range of butchery. For example, here, we've got a nice piece of butchery. It's been sheared off here, perhaps with a cleaver, something like that, down to more fine knife marks for filleting and skinning and all that kind of thing. So, yeah, processing on site.
And the pottery is sort of confirming all the food preparation as well. We've got the classic mortarium, the mixing bowl for preparing pastes and things like that. We've got the cooking pots. And finally, we've got the best Sunday china from which you eat your nice lamb casserole. This is from a nice sort of shallow bowl that would have been about this size.
It may have been a far outpost of the Roman Empire, but they didn't go without. To give our team a taste of what they would have eaten here, food and drink expert Sally Granger and I have been conscripted to prepare some delectable offerings. The Romans loved oysters, and the abundance of empty shells we've been finding here tell us that the Romans were eating them as a staple. So we'll be serving up some locally harvested Brancaster oysters. I got it through anyway. Hey!
Lovely. Oh, don't they look juicy?
Complete with a favourite accompaniment, a sauce made from rotted, fermented, oily fish called garum, imported from the Mediterranean.
It's black. It's pitch black. There's no light penetrating that at all. Now we're going to try some of this with a raw oyster.
It smells like the fertiliser that my dad used to put on the garden in the 1950s. Our pig bone discovery tells us that some of Branodunum's residents were well-to-do, because to the Romans, pork was a delicacy. So we've prepared some pork kebabs, spiced with coriander and cumin, which arrived here by boat from all over the Roman Empire, along with exotic oils and favourite wines.
Good smell, isn't it?
While we crack on with the cooking, time's running out for the team looking for a possible earlier fort in the field nearest to the sea. But Ian makes an all-important end-of-day find.
Hi, David. Hi. Well, we've got some, finally got a few little bits of pot down there. But it doesn't look Roman to me.
Wow, look at these. At first glance, no, I think you're right. These two, they've got flint gritting. Yep. I think those are well and truly Iron Age.
Cool.
Possibly 1st, 2nd century BC.
Right.
And this one, that looks a little bit later. So I'd place that sort of 1st century BC, possibly just into the AD. Where were these from?
Well, they're from this lower fill down here in the ditch, but there's no sign of any Roman in this ditch at all.
No.
That's not bad going.
So is this enclosure going to be Iron Age? We will find out tomorrow.
This pottery predates the Roman invasion. But before any history books are rewritten, they'll need more evidence from the trench if they're going to challenge the theory that there was an earlier Roman fort on this part of the site.
Roman dinner is ready.
Now it's the end of day and time for kebabs Roman style. But this lot are more interested in a Branodunum brew. Romans actually have beer.
Oh, I should hope so. Weren't they a bit posh for that, though? Wasn't it a bit of a wine thing?
No, of course they weren't. There were working-class Romans who would have drunk beer as well.
I think the officers would probably have drunk wine.
Then in that case...
No, no!
God, you're really gripping that!
Next, the oysters. Posh nosh for us.
Thank you very much.
But here in Roman times, they were foraged and freely available.
Well, I guess when the Romans came here, They must have been absolutely...
They fell on their feet, yeah. They
I
must
think
have
we
been
might
so
have
happy.
discovered why the fort is here.
Yeah.
We've unearthed loads of finds, but we're after the story of how Branodunum evolved, and we've got just one day left, with, I suspect, hangovers in the offing. It's our final day of digging at Branodunum Roman Fort in North Norfolk, and there's still all to play for. We think this trench over the ramparts could now be set to tell us more about just how the fort evolved. But we've only scratched the surface of what could be within the fort walls. But over there, that is our star trench. In it, we think we may have one of the most important buildings in the whole fort, and that is where we're going to be focusing all our resources today. This is over the fort's HQ, or Principia, where yesterday our Geophys survey revealed a lost underground chamber. Phil's team have been battling through layers of demolition left behind by the robbers, who over the centuries stole most of the Roman stone. But now, they've made a breakthrough.
You want to have a look down here, Tony, because this is as big and this is as impressive as you will ever see, because we've actually got the wall here, and the beauty of it is that most of it appears not to have been robbed out, and it is an incredible structure. Look at these beautifully shaped stones. Look, we can see the wall exactly as it was put up by the Romans, what, 2,000 years ago. And look, and that sand.
What's so exciting about sand? It doesn't sound very interesting to me.
Because it is exciting. If we've got backfilled natural in there and not in here, there's this demolition rubble, that would imply that this level goes down much, much deeper. That's exactly as predicted on the geophysics.
And what do you think that we would need to find in order to establish whether or not that was the case?
Well, I mean, it's going to be fresh Roman finds, things that were dropped there in Roman times. So everything we found up to now, I think I'm right in saying, Phil, has been removed from its original place of loss.
Finds in situ could tell us what this underground chamber was used for. In the field to the north, we've put in a trench to test the theory that there was another much earlier fort here. But the ditches that we've found aren't Roman. They're part of an earlier Iron Age, pre-Roman coastal settlement.
So we've got these two sort of parallel ditches here, and we're getting this stuff.
Wow, that's really interesting, though.
Yeah.
Even though they're really abraded, you can tell by the inclusions, the little bits of flint, that those are mid to late Iron Age. So they're the earliest bits of pot from the whole site.
Fantastic.
This pottery, which clearly dates the ditches to pre-Roman, is a great find. But the trench we put in to uncover a second building in the fort is proving more of a problem. We can't see why it doesn't line up, as one would expect, with the rest of the Roman fort, and we can't identify the building. But the results from a nearby trench do give us the answer. The mystery of the fort's development is about to unfold at the trench dug across the fort ramparts. Here, the team have uncovered more of its structure.
That actually is the earliest part of the fort. That is an earthen rampart.
Yeah, an earth bank, yeah.
Yeah, so we have the ditch coming through, and then we have this other earthen rampart, which probably would have gone all the way around this precinct.
The stone rampart is actually cut against the earth rampart, is that right?
Exactly. So what they've done is they've come along, they've decided they don't want to have an earthen rampart anymore. They want to build a big, posh wall. So they've actually cut into that earthen rampart and then constructed this massive wall that runs all around the perimeter.
My guess is that that was built in the 100s, possibly even a bit earlier. And I wouldn't be at all surprised if the first fort with the earth rampart was on that slightly squiffy...
The squiffy alignment.
Alignment, yeah? And I think that goes with the earlier fort. So we've been looking for an earlier fort out there and in other places. It was under our noses all the time, and you have found it in that rampart. So I am very, very pleased and excited, Raksha.
We now understand the development of this site in the late 1st century AD. It seems that the fort's earthen ramparts were constructed first, along with what our experts believe was a mansio, the fort's guest house, and that this lined up, as one would expect, with the ramparts and the associated vicus. Then the cut stone wall was added to the ramparts, making them bigger. And for whatever reason, they were built on a slightly different alignment. We really have rewritten the history of this fantastic site. And at the Principia, the new discovery has redoubled efforts in the trench. They've dug down now into the lost chamber. And a digger notices one of those finds that could easily have been missed.
A deposit of armour. Just a little tiny little.
I don't know if we want to leave it there too long in the sun. I mean, it would be, you know, we want to get it out. Because obviously it is quite a significant find.
While they painstakingly remove the delicate fragments of armour, John's Geophys team are pushing the capabilities of their underground radar kit. So far, 120 kilometres of sensors sweeping the site make this the biggest they've ever undertaken. But as a result, the system has crashed.
So basically, we've collected so much data that you've put the system on overload?
Yeah, that's it in a nutshell, really. We've filled the positional system up beyond its capacity.
They'd promised to deliver a survey across the entire 24 acres, but all that's now in the balance. Back at Phil's trench, the tiny pieces of Roman armour are out of the ground.
It's Roman scale armour. It's called Lorica squamata. If you look carefully, what we've got here are some tongue-shaped pieces of bronze riveted together, and if you look carefully there, you can actually see one of the little rivets still. And they'd be then attached to like a thick, stiffened leather or linen jerkin.
Ah, so that's not just the armour itself?
No, that's just the outermost layer. But it also allows a lot more flexibility and movement, and it's typical of the 3rd century onwards, particularly for cavalry regiments.
Is that right? That's what we got here then?
That's right, we know of at least 2 cavalry regiments, one from Aquitaine and one from Dalmatia.
It is amazing. I mean, not only are we beginning to get in this trench now a feel about the building itself, we've now got a sense of what the people who were in that building really looked like.
Yeah, lovely find.
We've made an unprecedented number of finds here, over 2,500 pieces in all, which tell us that this was a bustling and busy place. The locals, who shared their lives and traded with the Romans here, were catapulted from the Iron Age into Britain's first consumer society. Back at the Principia, it's time to take stock of what the trenches revealed about our star building.
What we've got are the foundations of the Principia building itself. And when I mean the foundations, these really are the foundations. You can see it down there. They are massive. They're about 1 metre across. If you look at that end section, do you see that grey, that whitish stuff?
Yeah.
That's the floor level of the underground room. So the foundations themselves go below that.
But I mean, that looks like proper dressed stone. You're not on the sort of rubble layer at the bottom. That is proper wall.
That is all below ground level. If they put that amount of care and attention into the foundations, just think how big that would have gone up there. It would have been absolutely colossal.
The Principia would have impressed all those who saw it. And around its central courtyard, there would have been dozens of offices from where Branodunum's officials and administrators worked. At the 59th minute, the Geophys team have completed their epic task of surveying the whole site. Even their troublesome radar survey has come up trumps. Up until now, we've only been able to identify 2 buildings within the fort's walls.
OK, so this is basically a 40-metre wide transect right across the interior of the fort. So it's going to go through the time slices and see if you can spot anything.
Good.
Just a bit.
These images are an archaeologist's dream come true.
I mean, if you look carefully, somewhere here you can see actually a couple of lines of colonnades.
Oh, look, stop. I mean, that is a massive stone structure.
And are those buttresses up against that wall?
Yes, definitely.
I don't think there's any doubt that's a storeroom or granary.
It could have been a storage depot for masses of grain grown in the hinterland that was being shipped out to supply larger Roman centres of population.
So what about the oval to the right, within that rectangle?
Well, what's crossing my mind is the fact that we know this is a cavalry fort. And I'm just wondering whether this is a gyrus.
Really?
You know, it's a small arena-like space that you use for breaking in and training new mounts.
This confirms that the cavalry regiments were right at the heart of Branodunum. And there's only one other Roman fort in Britain known to have a gyrus within its walls. This fort was jam-packed with buildings previously unknown to archaeologists. Our trenches have revealed two quite distinct phases of building and ramparts once clad in upmarket stone. None of us could have imagined we would achieve so much in 3 days. We leave Branodunum in the knowledge that it was a grand design, a thriving boom town and an important centre for the region. Given that we've had such a triumph over in that field, you might wonder why we're finishing here in front of this trench, which is probably the least glitzy of them all. Well, the answer is because this trench has transformed people's thinking about this site. Up till now, it was assumed that in this field there was a smaller, earlier Roman fort. We now know that isn't true. What we've got here is an Iron Age site, the people who lived here before the Romans, the people who one day looked up and saw sailing across the sea towards them the Roman ships, and from then on their lives were never the same again.